Topic is Black Medal of Honor recipients, and we're talking to Dr. Daniel Gibran, chairman of the Department of History, Political Science, and Geography at Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Gibran, before we had our first commercial break, you were talking about the participation of African Americans in the First World War.
Yes.
And let's sort of continue that by having you not only to talk about, continue that conversation, but also to say something about their participation in the Second World War and how that had an impact upon what you would eventually be able to do in terms of your research.
Yes. Coming out of the experience with black troops in World War I, Army commanders, Army General Staff, they were very concerned about the future participation of black troops. Should there be another war or major conflict, what will they do with black utilization? It was firmly decided that in any future conflict, one, black troops and white troops will not intermingle, and two, black troops would be used overwhelmingly in service or support roles.
Now, this is a period between the two wars.
That is correct. So when the United States entered into World War II and began their mobilization and deployment of troops, blacks had to fight vigorously to take part or to participate in combat, because the decision was made after the Selective Service Training Act in 1940 that yes, we will mobilize and utilize black manpower, but black manpower would be channeled or geared towards service roles or support roles and not in actual combat against the enemy. After some probably a year of going back and forth and pressures brought to bear from black interest groups like the NAACP, individuals like A. Philip Randolph and others, the ice was finally broken. And so the decision was taken that there will be minimal black participation in combat. So there was the 92nd Division again, the 93rd Division, and some smaller outfits like the 761st Tank Battalion and the 614 Light Infantry Tank Battalion, things like that, outfits like that. The 92nd was trained at Fort Huachuca like the 93rd and was deployed to the Mediterranean Theater in Italy. The 93rd was hurriedly carted off to the Pacific Command, where they performed mainly guard duties, some sort of support role. 92nd, on the other hand, took an active part in battle in Italy. They fought for over 6 months. They performed very well. There were instances, you know, when the same problems, you know, occurred. You know, things like, you know, men would break and run, you know, in the face of the enemy. In addition to that, there were individual acts of heroism demonstrated over and over by a number of soldiers in the 92nd Infantry Division. The 761st that fought in the European theater fought for 181 consecutive days. They performed extremely well, so much so that General Patton spoke to these men and said, "You are the finest fighting unit I have ever come across." And they were referred to as the Black Panthers. The 614 was the same way. And then when the call went out for voluntary replacement units, there were over 3,600 blacks who volunteered to fight alongside whites. And of that amount, about 2,400 were in actual combat, had special training on M1 rifles, things like that, and they performed extremely well. But World War II experience demonstrated that leadership plays a very important role in combat. In the 92nd, in particular, this was a very contentious issue, that the leadership of the 92nd Infantry Division failed to accept any blame for whatever failures there may have been among enlisted men of the 92nd Infantry Division. At the end of that war now, it became abundantly clear that there was no black recipient of the Medal of Honor. In spite of the fact that 1.2 million blacks took or participated in World War II, with over 80,000 being engaged in actual combat against the enemy, one would have thought somehow among these 80,000, someone would have demonstrated acts of bravery and courage that would have merited a recommendation for the Medal of Honor. So in 1946, President Truman received a letter from a black gentleman, Dr. C.F. Hobson from West Virginia, making the inquiry as to why the conspicuous absence of a black soldier of the Medal of Honor. From that time until 1990, these concerns were kept alive among black veteran groups across the country, in the black press, in the black media. Questions were being raised, and these concerns, were being ventilated. Why no black recipient of the Medal of Honor? Because when we look back, going to the Civil War, in every military engagement that this country participated in which there was black utilization, there had been black recipients of the Medal of Honor. This was the only major conflict in which there was no black recipient of the Medal of Honor.
You know, Dr. Gibran, we're coming up to our second commercial break, after which we'll have about 5 or 6 minutes before we end this program today. And what we'll do during this last segment is to allow you to give our audience some additional information in reference to those, to your research story in a real sense, in terms of how you were able to conduct the research and some of the things that you were able to use in order to convince the government of the existence of these recipients. And of course, we'll be back with you following this short commercial break.